All right, we are back with our transformation coach. It's time for Good Vibes. I'm Martin False. Debbie Cox DeNova joins us in today's topic. Everyone on the planet ought to listen to because, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
Relieving stress.
Relieving stress.
Anyone who tells me they do not have stress, no matter what they do, they're lying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And actually, we were designed to have stress. All species have stress. And stress is actually there to serve us. It's meant to be transient. It's meant to get us moving in an action to resolve problems. The problem now, though, is that our brain was designed to alleviate stress in very specific, actionable ways. And the stressors in our modern world have us unable to actually take action in the way that we used to. So we watch the news and we're bombarded with a whole bunch of bad news all over the world. Nothing we can do about it. It's just there, right? And also, there's mechanistically, there are things that happen within the brain and the body when you go through stress. And we are designed to balance those things out. But with our modern lifestyle, we're not actually dealing with the cortisol and the adrenaline that happens in the body fast enough. So we actually carry all of the stress. Now, this information comes from Emma McAdams.
Say that 3 times,
Right?
yeah.
Emma McAdams, and she's a therapist, and also Andrew Huberman from the Huberman Lab. And there's so much that could be talked about, but we're going to highlight some lifestyle changes and also some in the moment things that we can do to balance that stress out. We've talked about some of them, but just to underscore that at home so that you know exactly how to bring yourself back into balance from a physiological perspective.
By the way, I used something from your last show. We had a woman who was about to give a speech to a crowd, and I was up on the stage with her. Yeah. And she says, I am so nervous. I said, count to 5 and just get up there and do it. I'll put my hand on your back. So she went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, ran up to the mic and started.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's one of them that I wasn't actually even going to talk about, but just as a reminder at home, this is something that Mel Robinson talks about where you count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you're getting that prefrontal cortex involved in the countdown. And then before you can actually start talking yourself out of it and creating reactivity in your body, you move. So you kind of prep yourself, by quieting the amygdala, counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then taking action. And that's really what the stress response is there for, to get us to take action. So we have all sorts of things designed within us. First of all, stress is very general. So it creates a chain of reactions in the body that are meant to get us to take action and to resolve the issue. So there are a chain of neurons called the sympathetic chain ganglia that go from the stem of the brain all the way down to the gut. And when you are in a stressed response, when you go into a sympathetic response, right, fight or flight, what happens is that acetylcholine, which we talked about, helps us to focus and also to move, gets released from that chain of neurons. And what happens after that is you have epinephrine that happens, adrenaline, your blood vessels will dilate, blood flows to the larger muscle group so that you can take action. You're more likely to do something, and you're also more likely to say something when you're in the sympathetic response. So if you ever have said anything that you regretted in a state of stress, that is why, because you basically are designed to resolve. Now, Emma McAdams has a story. She talks about how she's reading the Little House on the Prairie storybooks to her child. And in one of the chapters, they realized that their baby corn was at risk for freezing. So the weather was doing something odd, and they were afraid that all of their crops were going to freeze and they would have nothing by the time it was harvest time. So they watched the weather, and sure enough, it was going to freeze. They woke up the children, and all through the night, they realized if they watered every single little corn, that they could save it from freezing in the morning. So that's what they did. They ran around acres of land, watering these little corns, and in the morning, they were able to save most of their crops, and they were able to relax, and a job well done. Now, think about that scenario. They were not able to sleep because there's adrenaline and cortisol going. They see a problem, and then they create a resolution for that problem by doing something all through the night. They're not sleeping, all of that. In that scenario, they're freezing.
Right.
But in the morning, they get to reap the rewards because they resolved the issue. There was an emergency at hand. They were able to take action, and it was resolved. That is the way that it is done. And in the running around, by the way, they're burning off all the cortisol and adrenaline that's in the system. Now,
Did they have to go to school the next day?
I have no idea. You'll have to read the book. Not sure about that. But in our modern day, our stresses come from what? Workloads by the computer. We're sitting at the computer. We're watching the news. There's a lot where we're not actually burning off the adrenaline and cortisol physically the way that we were designed to do. So it just kind of stays in the system. This is where exercise becomes key. Even 5 minutes of exercise a day, specifically and most importantly, aerobic exercise, can help burn off that cortisol, that adrenaline, and get you to come down to baseline again. So if you're not exercising on a regular basis, if you can at least squeeze 5 minutes in where you're actually helping your body to relieve some of the stress response that builds up in our modern day, it can be so helpful. The other thing is, think about your morning routine, because we've talked about morning routines a lot. What typically people do first thing in the morning actually exacerbates stress and anxiety. So the first thing they do is what? Turn on the news, check the emails, maybe social media, and then they get caffeine in their system. Now, caffeine is really great for causing us to become more energetic. But as we talked about before, what it does is it blocks adenosine in the brain. And adenosine is a chemical that is there to help us relax, right? And so it blocks adenosine, but then it also raises adrenaline and cortisol. And over time, you actually get some of the alert effects that come from caffeine. You get kind of you have to have more to have the same result. But the anxiety-inducing effects actually don't go away. So you can actually create anxiety and stress within your body and also become more dependent on
But
caffeine.
don't drink your coffee till 10 o'clock. I'll listen to you on
That's
the
right,
show. You
that's
say, I'm
right.
listening, Debbie. I started doing something different. First of all, I'll put waterfalls with music on at night or listen to the rosary on YouTube. They got a great rosary. In the morning, nothing. I used to put the news on, like you said. I quit doing that.
Amazing.
So I'm wondering, back in our grandparents' days, I know they had stress, but they couldn't survive in today's stress.
Right.
We've sort of created a monster on our own, haven't we?
We have. And again, we've got all of these we're bombarded with information, first of all. And all of the highlights at the top of the news stories are stress-inducing stories. So we're constantly feeding ourselves a steady stream of this. And like we said before, stress is actually meant to be good for us. It's actually meant to move us out of a situation that's not so good into action so that we can resolve it and come back to baseline.
But one thing at a time, not 800.
Exactly. We weren't built for chronic stress, right? It's kind of like we talked about with anger. That's a transient experience that helps you disrupt a certain state. It informs you that your standards have been violated. And so it moves you in. But if it's chronic, then it can be very, very destructive to health. And so we want to make sure that our lifestyle is set up to promote the relaxation that we need to be the healthiest, to activate the parasympathetic response. But then, as we were talking about before the break, we want to make sure that our mornings start us off right, because that sets the tone for the day. So it's wonderful that you don't have the television on. And at home, if you're starting with caffeine, which we talked about this before, waiting to start caffeine actually is good in terms of energy because you're not competing with your highest spike of cortisol for the day. So allowing the cortisol to sort of be the shining star, because cortisol is meant to be good as well. We kind of have a bad association to that, but it's actually meant to bring us to a wakeful state, right? Allowing it to be the star of the show, and as it comes down, then you have caffeine, but limiting your caffeine, because it's already been shown through studies that caffeine can actually exacerbate anxiety and depression, and it can stay in your system or it can actually have effects for up to 48 hours. So if you're having anxiety issues, limiting your caffeine or even doing a detox for 3 days might give you a really great refresher so that you can get back to baseline.
So not just coffee, chocolate.
Right.
A lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. But the caffeine in particular of any kind is going to block that relaxation chemical in your brain, adenosine. And then, of course, in the morning time, making sure that you think about what kind of day you want to have. And then setting your day with the activity. So if you know that media of like the news and all sorts of things, the social media, all of that creates a certain experience in your body that's not really conducive with what you're trying to produce through the day, don't do that first thing in the morning, right? Make sure the TV stays off. And maybe for you, it's walking so you can get that energy up out in the sunlight like
And
we talked
shouldn't
about.
couples, I know this as we look at sunlight getting in people, and sunlight can be the best therapeutic thing. But this question aimed at couples. Some people just want to be very quiet when they wake up. They don't want to talk.
Yeah.
the other side of the bed, somebody's a chirper. They just wah.
Right.
You better learn your part and know when to engage, and better be a halfway point, because that could get real dicey.
Absolutely. This comes back to compatibility. And speaking of that, we can also talk about sleep, the quality of your sleep, because a lot of times what's happening, the reason why you're putting so much caffeine in is because you're not getting good quality sleep. And then, of course, you're putting too much caffeine, which is also disrupting your sleep. If you have a partner who has different sleep styles than you or goes to bed at a completely different time because you have different chronotypes, this may be something that you want to explore. There's one expert, I can't remember who it is right now, but who is a big proponent. He's a world-renowned sleep expert. He's a big proponent of sleep divorces. So if you can't get it straight, where it's like one person's or both partners' sleep is being disrupted by the sleep patterns by the time you go to bed, or the tossing and the turning or the snoring, sleep in different spaces and sort of do bookends. So snuggle before you go to bed, part ways, sleep, and then come back together in the morning time, because sleep is so important to stress reduction.
Well, if you push a button and a big petition comes in between.
Exactly. If somebody could invent that, that would be.
One of the partners is counting sheep, the other's counting money.
That's it. That's it. Because look, your prefrontal cortex, the part of you that it needs to be online in order to help you to deal with stress, can't be at its best if you're not getting good sleep. So if you feel like you're drinking too much caffeine to address a sleep issue, it's time to actually take on your sleep full. And there's an episode that we did about sleep. So if you want to go back and look at that, that's a really, really important thing. It makes a difference to everything that you do in your life.
I was reading or watching on YouTube. See, I'm into YouTube now. I'm graduated. Magnesium and threonate. I think it is threonate allows the magnesium to break the barrier into the brain. And magnesium has to get to the brain. A lot of people take magnesium with no way to get it to the brain.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So there at home, magnesium, there are some other natural things that you can take that might help. Valerian root is one of them. And some people take 5-HTP. If you can actually do it the most natural way possible, that's my biggest suggestion. But if you need supports, there are many natural supports. And again, we go over those in the sleep episode. But the other thing is, don't fill up your schedule from the beginning to the end. We're not designed, we're in a multitasking kind of society, and really we were designed for monotasking.
Wait, say that again?
Multitasking.
No, don't fill up your schedule.
Right, don't fill up your schedule, right.
I'm done. Okay.
But you do create space for yourself to come down in the morning time, and that's what we're really talking about, is making sure that you give yourself downtime, remembering that you are a human being, and then remember the physiological sigh. You want to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. That's the easiest way to shut down the stress response. Double inhale, long exhale. It will slow your heart rate down. It'll bring you back online. Do it 3 times, and then you will be more adept to responding instead of reacting.
Great topic. I hope people listen and practice.
Breathe.
Breathe. There you go. All right, we'll take a break. Look forward to talking with Debbie again next week on Good Vibes. Have a good day, everybody. We'll see you again around the corner.